I'm going to go back up to my data, okay, which takes me back to the data and that customer balance. And if I look at down here, we're sitting with, there's no value in customer number 1. Now in your records it says number 9, I've got it nothing in number 10, okay, because I've got them in a slightly different order. So if I right click on that blank field, I can now say display all records containing, and there's 2 quotations, in other words, display all records containing a space in that character. Okay. And if I say OK, these are the 5 records. They've come from different salesmen, we've got different customers, we've got a product code that was sold and we've got the amount that was sold. And we can see the invoice numbers and the transaction dates, and they were paid by different credit cards. But these were payments to customers who theoretically at least don't exist. So, do we have a fraud going? Or do we just have someone who is bypassing our authorized customer procedure? We don't know from this, it doesn't tell us. It tells us we have an abnormality, and we need to go and check. Again, I can right click in the properties and look at the criteria, and in that I can clear that. And now if I go into my customer number instead of customer number 1, if I pick up record 66 on my case, which are no customer number, and I say again all of these, now it's showing all of the customers who did not actually buy anything. So no payments have been made or no purchases have been made, depending on whether I'm looking at the sales purchase or the sales payment file. So again, I need to find out which file I'm looking at. And again, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see number of records, 43 out of 493. We've got 43 customers with no outstanding balance. It's the kind of thing that periodically you might want to do, where you're looking for example, employee numbers working for a department code that doesn't exist. Now, why would somebody want to work for a department code that doesn't exist? Well, typically what happens is that if payment is being made by cash, the pay clerk gets given all of the pay envelopes, or makes up the pay envelopes for the different departments, and then sends them out to the departments. If there's a department that doesn't exist, that goes into his pocket, perhaps. Now, if I wanted to do a check, typically what I would do is I would print from the payment side payments by department, and I would go out and check each of the departments. But if there's a department code that doesn't exist, and I went from my department records and said, show me, these are my genuine departments, show me all of the people who work in those departments, and let me go and check them. That's not the same thing as saying these are all of the people who got paid, show me all of the departments that they work in. You come up with 2 totally different results. I had an example some years back when I was dealing with a medical insurance company, and the problem was that the computer software they were using had been written for them as a package by a third party, and the third party had unrestricted access into their systems in case they needed to fix anything at any time. Now, this thing was producing medical aid type checks going out for payments, and this outside contractor had unrestricted access to go in there and do anything they wanted. So I said, listen, how do you know that when you get a check out that it's valid, it's for a valid transaction? He said, now Our external auditors picked us up on that a couple of years back. And what we do is we take all of the valid transactions and we take a statistically valid sample of them, and we then compare them to the checks. Now, do you see anything wrong with that? They're taking the authorized transactions and comparing them to the checks. What are they doing? They're saying for every authorized transaction, a check is produced. They are not saying for every check produced, there is an authorized transaction. For 2 years, they had been checking it the wrong way around and saying everything's okay. We did one check and said, take a statistically valid sample from the checks and check it back to the authorized transactions. Unfortunately, because we had IDEA, we were able to say, forget a statistically valid sample, take all of the checks and compare them all back to the original authorized transactions. And lo and behold, there were a couple of checks where there was no transaction. Someone had gone in, whether it was an insider, whether it was a supplier, hard to say because they had virtually no internal controls over access, so anyone could go in and do anything. But someone was generating checks from unauthorized transactions. And it's as simple as that. And it's as easy to pick up as that. If you look for a match and you find something's missing, you know you've got a problem.